Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, I pause this.
Say that people are getting denied access and we can't figure out
What's happening? We're trying to get everybody logged in. So I'll start probably 3:06. All right, we'll get started. We have 12 people on right now. So I had a plan to screen share some things to talk about, my journey and then the progressions in training, how you kind of analyze athletes to determine how to ultimately optimize performance for your individual plan. Right. So I guess the first thing I'll do is I'll talk about my story, and then we can go into any questions. I'll have Coach Edgar here, help moderate it and ask any questions relating to like performance and things like that. Things that we've seen on Reddit or on social media that are common questions that people ask about how to influence their success on court or in their sport. So the first thing I'll talk about is my story. And feel free to ask questions at any time. I can't hear you guys, but you guys can engage in the chat and I can read them and then respond. So yeah, I'm a strength coach, worked in the NBA for 6 years, work at USC now as a director. So I manage a lot of high level athletes. My goal is to optimize their performance, help them be elite athletes to lead to the NBA and successfully reach their dreams. Right. My career ended because you good. My career ended because I played college basketball and I got hurt. So that was devastating. That made me become a strength coach. This guy thinks it's funny.
It's just delayed.
Anyways, so basketball was my passion since I was a little kid. I knew I wanted to be an NBA strength coach, and I focused on just being the best basketball player ever. I want to play in the NBA, but I knew that wasn't going to happen once I got hurt, or once I even got to Division II. I was like, man, Division II to the NBA is going to be tough. So I'd be realistic because like this is not going to work out. I became obsessed with training. The reason I became obsessed with training is because I idolized Jason Richardson and Vince Carter, and they were high flying dunkers, and I wanted to jump just like them. So my freshman year of high school, I remember one instance when everybody's touching the backboard, and I tried to touch it. I was only 5'4", maybe 90 pounds. Tried to touch it over and over again, was unsuccessful. Got embarrassed badly by all the players on my team. And I vowed to start strength training. And the strength training led to me becoming really athletic. So by the time I was a sophomore, I was 5'10", and I ended up being the first one on my team dunking. And the fact that I came back after not being able to touch the rim and then becoming a dunker was what made me become so athletic and respected. So I was obsessed with the strength training. And then I just continued to buy in, became super athletic, helped my game a lot, became more of a slasher, got to hoop when I wanted, could play above the rim. And those things ultimately led to me getting a scholarship, right? Play Division II basketball, like I said. Excited to tell more. Yeah, I guess I'll start by, seeing if anybody has questions relating to what their dreams are or what their journey's been like, or feel free to ask whatever. If there's no questions that pop up, I can just go on to a different topic.
So Reddit has a few questions
Okay.
from people that are saying they're going to rewatch this stream. The first one is on tendonitis and what you would recommend, specifically Achilles tendonitis.
Okay, so one of the questions on Reddit was about tendonitis, particularly Achilles tendonitis, but I'll talk about just tendonitis in general. So the first thing you want to do is very important to understand is like, what is tendonitis and how does tendonitis happen? So tendonitis is referring to inflammation of the tendon. So tendon referring to the part of the body, itis referring to inflammation. So tendonitis is referring to the inflammation of a particular tendon, right? So in basketball players, the most common forms of tendonitis are Achilles and patellar tendonitis, or also known as jumper's knee, right? So Achilles tendonitis becomes prevalent and patellar tendonitis become prevalent when forces are too substantial. Okay, how often should high school kids be lifting during the season? Gotcha. I'll answer that next. Okay, so for the tendonitis question, there's a few issues that can cause it, right? One issue would be overloading, right? An unfamiliar amount of loading. So for instance, let's say you're practicing 20 hours a week, right? That's probably too much. Let's try practicing 5 hours a week, right? And then the next week you decide to practice 6 or 7 hours, right? You increase your workload by 10 to 20%. That alone can create tendonitis, right? Because you've increased the demand on the tendon. So every time you jump, change direction, the tendon gets yanked on. That impact creates micro tears in the tissue, right? You create more than usual, or you create more pounding than usual. it's going to create a response. And if your body can't handle the response, there's going to be an inflammatory process that happens, and then you get pain receptors firing, right? So that's how the tendonitis may start. Other than that, tendonitis could happen because of weakness, right? Say if you're under training, you start jumping a lot more, right? And you're not strong, your tendons is not thick enough from a lack of training, or your muscles are not strong enough to absorb the forces. Energy is not displaced appropriately. The tendon is then having to bear more load than it usually does, and that causes inflammation, right? And then what often happens is the problem continues. You continue to spike workload, or you start compensating because you're feeling pain in the spot, and then tendonitis becomes more and more prevalent because the compensation pattern happened, the loading strategies change. So those are things to consider. So in order to fix tendonitis, what you want to do is you want to do a couple things. You want to understand your workload, and if your workload that you're doing that since the tendonitis occurred is appropriate or is a huge increase, right? If it's not a huge increase, you want to look at your training program. Are you doing strength training, right? Then you want to look at your body composition. Are you overweight? Are you undertrained? Then you want to look at strategies to resolve it. So once you can identify kind of a direction which you need to go, then you're going to say, okay, what's my plan of action? Do I need more isometrics for my tendon health? Do I need to get stronger relative to my body mass? So it's kind of like a process of elimination, right? But yeah, anybody who has questions relating to tendonitis, I can do an eval or screening and kind of give you some insight, ask some questions that give direction to understand, what the underlying causes are. Because if you don't address it, it becomes a bigger problem. Okay, so the next question: how often should high school kids be lifting during season? That's a great question. Okay, so I train a lot of high school kids, and what I do in season is I ask for their schedule. They send me their entire high school season basketball schedule, and then I look at the days they play, and I plan based on days away from games, right? So, for instance, most high school athletes play 2 to 3 times a week, right? So that means there's probably usually at least 2 days in between games, right? Unless they're playing in a tournament, which happens around the holiday season. But other than that, I have guys that play Tuesdays and Fridays in league games, and then it's just sporadic in the preseason, right? So you have time in between. So considering the time in between, right, I would definitely train as much as possible, right? You also got to consider your resources, right? So some guys that I train, they train after games, right? Because that's the best window to train. The game ends, it's a really hard workload day. You train after, then you have a day off to completely rest. Ideally, in training in any setting, NBA, college, high school, you want to train super hard, right, on one day, and then the day following it, you want to taper down, then rise. So it's like up, down, up, down, up, down. You don't want it to be like a hard day, which would be a game day, followed by a really hard weight training day, followed by another game day, right? Because you're always at these peaks. So you want to have something called undulating cycle. So really hard game day, easy day. Really hard game day, easy day. Or really hard weight training day, easy day, right? Or even just like really hard speed power day, rest day, really hard strength, slow conditioning day, and changes. You always want to understand how to strategize around it. So to answer your question, it's really long. How often should they train? My high school guys, I have them train probably at least 3 times a week, right? And it's either full body or a split depending on their schedule. So it's hard to give an exact answer because every situation is different, but you definitely want to train, I'd say at the bare minimum twice a week in any sport throughout the season. Because if you don't train at least twice a week, you're going to regress, right? And you need these exposures. Say if you got strong throughout the summer, you're feeling bouncy. A lot of times people will train all summer, they're feeling really bouncy. They go into season and they start losing their bounce. There's a reason you do that because you're detraining, right? You're regressing, you're losing the abilities you inherited by working hard through the summer. So you have to focus on continue to maintain those abilities and ultimately grow. Like I'm seeing PRs on our guys through the season because we're still training, but it has to be structured. Hopefully that answers your questions. If you want more insight on that, just follow up with another question. I got you.
Got another one from
Okay.
Reddit. It says, how do NBA players train their vertical considering how packed their season is with games? And how do they fit in the skills training on top of physical training?
All right, Mr. Footallow, got you. Any other questions? Don't hesitate to ask. Okay, so the next question from Reddit was regarding NBA players. How do we optimize their training in season, and how do we improve, performance metrics like vertical jump, even though there's 82 games, right? So, being that there's 82 games in a season, there's a game pretty much every other day, and there's a lot of back to backs. So in the NBA, it's the most commonly done thing of any sport is to train after the game because the window between games is so small. You have to maximize it really hard. This kind of relates to the question I was just asked a minute ago. NBA players will often do a really hard training session after the game or even before the game. So if I said maybe like 2 sessions, for instance, this is how NBA schedule works, right? Let's say I have um, Steph, Draymond, whatever, Clay, the last group come in, right, which is closest to the game. They'll come to treatment. They'll do treatment with our athletic training staff at around, let's say 4 to 4:30. Then from 4:30 to maybe 6 is their window to do, 4:30 to 5:15 maybe is their window to do player development stuff. They go on court, they do the skill work before the game. Then from 5:15 to maybe 6 or 5:45, they come see me in the weight room and they do a small weight training session. That stimulates their body, doesn't create fatigue. It really just gets them ready, right? But at the same time, it does give them exposures of weight training, something external, something that can produce more power output, that can produce more gains, right? So a small session before the game starts, they go play the game. Immediately when the game ends, there's another weight training session, another probably 30-minute exposure. So that means in total, they probably lifted an hour that day, right? And that alone could be enough of a stimulus to make gains through the season, right? And then you got to consider like how many minutes are they playing. So Steph, Clay, Draymond, when they're playing 30, 40 minutes a game, their weight training routine will be different than someone who plays 20 minutes a game. Even at USC, we have guys that play 35 to 40 minutes. Following the game, we do isometric, we do easy stuff, just things that are more maintenance to take care of you because they created so much taxing during the game, so much taxing to their body during the game. And then we have a low minute squad. Anybody who plays below 20 minutes, they get harder weight training exposures. And the reason they do that is because they need that demand that they didn't get from the game. Cool. Feel free to write questions anytime, and then I'll continue to go off some questions that we were asked prior to this.
This guy says, I'm a trainer. I just had my first season for an AAU team. I'm just wondering, what do you have to do to make it in the basketball industry, and how did you do it yourself?
Okay, that's a great question. So what was asked is someone is a trainer, right? And they're trying to ultimately make the position that I was previously at or the position I'm at this point, right? To succeed in this field. And they're asking, what do they need to do to create separation? So if you want to be a trainer at some point, if you want to be, first of all, you need to understand, you want to be a strength coach, sports scientist, physical therapist, athletic trainer, chiropractor, massage therapist, figure out exactly what you want, and then you can create a plan of action. But for instance, I'm in the sports performance realm, so I work hand in hand with all these people on a daily basis. So I have to understand a lot of these things. I don't have a niche of like working with, certain things, but like athletic training, but I do understand it. Where my niche is the sports science and strength and conditioning. So I'm able to create a abrasive environment to push these guys and make changes from a performance setting, right? While an athletic trainer is more passive, more rehab, more modality based, like, cupping, scraping, Normatec, ice, things like that. They take care of them. They do the more rehabilitative based stuff that's not as abrasive. Okay, I'm more like intensity, change direction, performance stuff. So, say if you want to be where I'm at as a strength conditioning coach at a high level, right? There's a sequence that you want to go through. You definitely want to get a bachelor's degree. That's the first thing you need. Once you have a bachelor's degree, you'd want to get this certification called a CSCS. It's a certified strength and conditioning coach. Once you've done that, you can start interning. I would say intern probably 2 or 3 different places to get different exposure from different programs, right? You'll learn. You can figure out how you're going to determine your philosophy. Once you determine your philosophy, network like crazy. Continue to reach out to people. Try to get entry-level jobs. Once you get your first entry-level job, then it's kind of like put your time in. You get the first job, you do that a couple years, hopefully find a good coach, you work for a good team. Then you get your mid-major job or high-level job, MBA job, and then you kind of bounce around from there, right? Continue to build your network, continue to work on your craft. Like for me, I didn't know I was gonna have to know sports science. I don't have to know how to code on computers. Like I do that now, right? So you kind of have to adapt with times, be innovative. So every process is different, but you definitely got to consider that you're competing against a lot of people. It's a very concentrated field. It's hard to get into and hard to succeed in it. So you got to find ways to create separation. So, most of us have a graduate degree or a PhD. Those sometimes will be paid for by the organization. Like I said, depends on your path, but you have to consider things at those times. Okay. T Millie, what's up? What age should kids start focusing on strength conditioning, and what should that progression look like for younger kids? Okay, so I'll answer that question as if I have my own children, right? because I think that's the most honest question. That's something I think about consistently because I'm trying to make straight elite athletes. I'm trying to have the best athletes in the world. And I feel like I know the secret sauce, right? So I'll tell you my story and I'll tell you how I'm going to go about it with my children. So there's a genetic inheritance, right? And there's something called epigenetics. Epigenetics is how you express and optimize your genes, right? So my genes, I was given pretty decent height. I'm 6'2", right? But neither of my parents ever played a sport, not even recreational sports, super unathletic, right? So I didn't inherit any athletic capabilities, right? That's why when I was a freshman, I couldn't touch the backboard. I had no balance. I was skinny, scrawny, no muscle mass, right? I had to earn this through my epigenetic expression, through training. So I trained my ass off. I learned how to eat clean. I started to understand the philosophy, the structure of strength training, and that's what led to me being this athletic. So now when I have children, my children will inherit my genes, my current genes, right? Because I've worked, I put the work in, I've done all the things, right? So they're inheriting quality. So my kids will have a genetic advantage, right? Plus my mate, whoever that is, I have an assumption of who it'll be. She's pretty athletic as well, right? So we would crossbreed, whatever, and make a child that has a genetic advantage. Anyways, when you're trying to create an athlete, for me, if I'm thinking of my kids that are, in their preteens, adolescence, puberty, I'm going to consider these things. I'm going to consider how do I make them as coordinated as possible? How do I challenge their nervous system? That's my first thing I'm thinking of, right? So as children, I would put them in tons of sports. I would put them in sports like soccer, right? Soccer, the demands of soccer is reaching very high intensity, high thresholds, changing direction at high speeds, backpedaling, sprinting. Those are good things. If you're consistently sprinting at high speeds, you're going to make neurological changes, which will make you faster, right? If you're reacting to a defender and kicking a ball with one leg, bouncing on another leg, you're going to develop neurological advantages, right? Baseball, I'll put them in baseball. Baseball is a rotational sport. There's a lot of hand-eye coordination involved in baseball, which will help them in any other sport moving forward. Wrestling, right? You're grappling with someone, you're finding out how to create balance in different positions. You're working tons of rotation. One part of the body is having one action while another part is doing another action. So there's like proprioception, the ability to have an awareness of space. That's very important. I'll put them in track. Track, you're over and over for hours. You're trying to reach your highest speed. That's going to change type 2 muscle fiber, make you more athletic. What other sports did I do? Football, probably. I'd have my children, have a position that demands high speed, agility, quickness, right? So if you look at different positions, cornerback, quarterback, wide receiver, running back. Running back is going to have high agility demand, but also needs high strength demand, right? They're making contact. They're trying to break through contact. So a running back will naturally be stronger than a cornerback. A cornerback tackles infrequently. Their main responsibilities are to move at high speeds because someone, a wide receiver who's really athletic, is making decisions on a predetermined route. They don't know the route, so they have to have the reactive capabilities at high speeds while backpedaling. That's why cornerbacks are the most athletic position in any sport, in my opinion. Right. So my children would play all these sports, and then I would probably get them to do plyometrics consistently as a kid, right? Jumping, change direction, find ways to make fun games and engaging games. Having them play one-on-one with their friends for hours, like just different stuff like that. Like, why don't you guys do one-on-one challenge or run routes, reactive routes, things that are going to challenge them, right? Have them do ground-based stuff like I said, wrestling, gymnastics maybe would be good. Those will develop all the neurological traits. And then once they have that, I think the sport will come easy. Whatever sport they choose will become easy to them because they have a huge athletic advantage, right? And they're optimizing their genetic profile. And then, in terms of weight training, okay, so this is a big myth, right? Weight training does not make you shorter, okay? If you think from a physiological perspective, people say historically, weight training makes you shorter because you're compressing your spine. Okay, I understand that. I understand the thought behind it, right? Weight compressing spine, you get shorter, optimize growth plates. But there's something called Wolff's Law. Wolff's Law is when you create forces on something, your body responds. So gravity, for instance, or jumping, pounding, pounding, pounding. Every time I pound, I'm creating impacts to the bones. There's microfractures that happen. My bone density increases because these things called osteoblasts are secreted. Astronauts go to space. They don't have gravity. They come down. They're in wheelchairs oftentimes, right? Or they have to weight train in space or else they can't walk when they get back to Earth, right? So if I'm weight training and I'm creating forces, external forces heavier than my own body mass, right? That's going to create more stimulation from human growth hormone and osteoblasts, which will make my bones thicker and stronger. I'm influencing secretion of hormones, human growth hormone particularly, that will really expedite the release of my growth hormones, right, which make me stronger, faster, more athletic. So if you want to be taller and you depend on your bone length, if you can create bone stimulation and release more human growth hormone, you're going to maximize your growth window, right? So you can actually become taller through weight training if you just think from a physiological perspective and not look at it like a myth, right? So there's a lot of misconceptions, right? You also don't want to be doing, like, I'm not going to have my 10-year-old kid back squatting. I don't even have my athletes back squat, right? Like, we don't back squat. I never saw it in the NBA. I don't do it with our guys. But there's a reason for that, right? But you can train to elongate tissue, right? So there's a lot of things to it. But I would certainly have my children weight train probably in their early years. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm doing heavy back squat stuff, but I'll give them exposures. All right. Feel free to ask any other questions. I'm giving long answers. And if you get a question based off what I'm saying, write something down. I'll read it once I'm done talking. I'll answer that as well.
We do have another Reddit one.
Okay.
This one is from a dude who's a bit older. He says, I'm 43, just a recreational basketball player. I've been trying to build back my explosiveness. What would you recommend for basically someone my age trying to get back into my peak?
Okay. So we have someone who's 43 years old. He's not athletic like he probably used to be, but he wants to become athletic. So he's asking what he can do. So naturally, Mother Nature is undefeated, or Father Time is undefeated. Mother Nature is too. You naturally lose the elastic or high force capabilities, right? You're not as reactive. You don't store as much elastic energy, meaning you won't pop off the ground and jump as high as quickly, right? So that's something natural that happens that you can't really avoid, but there are qualities you can train. So you got to understand the person first. So if this guy's 43 and he's been not moving or changing direction quick for years, he's probably lost some elastic demand, right? His tendons aren't storing as much energy as they used to, right? So we want to restore the energy in the tendons. That's one thing, right? And you can do that by doing certain type of training, jumping, change the direction, which consistently loads the tendon, yanks on it, pulls it, which creates a response to the body to send more energy to tissue. So when you pull back and you jump, you get a bigger band-like response, right? So there's one thing you can do. Other than that, I would look at his body composition. What's his fat mass look like? Because that's the fastest way to get athletic is to lose fat mass, right? Other than that, I would look at his relative strength. How strong is he compared to his body? What's his weight training experience? What's his conditioning like? So I'll do a massive baseline to understand where his deficits are. Once you understand what your deficits are, then you can make decisions on how to make the changes. So for a 43-year-old, don't think it's over. For a 60-year-old, don't think it's over, right? You just got to start looking at where your underlying causes are that are limiting you, and ultimately make decisions to create structure in a training program to get you athletic again. All right, we'll answer any questions asked, and then we'll answer a couple of more questions from Reddit.
Right now I have this one. It says, I want to help my son with two things: faster feet / lateral movement on D, and getting more separation on offense when driving. He's not tall, not short, kind of built like Luka. How would you?
Okay, so we have someone asking how they can make their son more athletic in terms of like having fast reactive feet, right? He said he plays like Luka, doesn't change direction very quickly, has trouble creating separation on offense, have trouble guarding people on defense, right? So the first thing I think of is he needs reactive demands. I would ask, what position does your son play, right? What do his workouts look like, right? So if you're not reactive, you probably need reactive exposure. There's a reason that point guards are really athletic, and there's a reason why centers are not athletic, right? Not because they're taller and shorter. We're all designed the same, right? We have a genetic advantage. Some do more than others, right? But a point guard every single day is having every single time they play is having to travel the most distance, right, from baseline to baseline, or from baseline to baseline. They got to run at high speeds. They're getting guarded by a fast point guard. They're stopping on a dime. They're rotating around the wing to create sets. So they're running, change direction, sprinting a lot, right? A center goes from one side of the hoop into the post to the other side of the hoop into the post, right? Not very many reactive demands. They just got to worry about sealing and creating contact, while the point guard has to worry about changing direction, getting away from people, right? So if you want to improve your speed, agility, quickness, you need to start incorporating reactive things. Even just doing fire feet with your son, a couple times a day, like switch right, left, forward, backwards, change at point. You can just do sliding drills like right, left, forward, back, right, point a direction and have him run as fast as he can. Every time you point a new direction, he's changing direction, right? He has to react on a dime, which creates high force, high change of direction, high rate of force development, which will then make them more athletic, right? So I would ask, for this particular question, what is your son doing? And then I would say, okay, what are the deficits and how do we make these changes? But ultimately, it's probably a lack of exposure. Okay, so I have another question. It says, do you think you could be successful in strength conditioning without the typical undergrad degree? Do you got any recommendation for resources to keep learning when my major isn't directly related to SNC? Because that's a great question. So you don't necessarily have to have a strength conditioning degree, but you do need to get a graduate. You do need to graduate undergrad to be eligible to take a test called CSCS. So you can literally study like philosophy, communications, right? Then you can take the CSCS, which is a test, right? It's not like you have to take certain courses to be eligible for the test. So you can take that test, pass that test, right? I know people that I've worked with as I've come up in this industry, and some of my friends that are currently in it that didn't have kinesiology undergrad degrees. It certainly helps you, but if you don't do that, it's okay. So what you should do is get the CSCS. Once you get the CSCS, that kind of proves that you know what you're talking about, meaning you've done the extracurricular stuff to study the material and know like about the body and training systems. Once you do that, then you can start to apply for internships or graduate degrees. In the graduate degree case, there probably are some prerequisites, but I do know strength coaches that don't have grad degrees. It just makes it harder for you because ultimately there's going to be people that are competing with you that have grad degrees, PhDs, right? So if I'm looking to hire someone, I see a PhD versus someone with an undergrad degree only, the PhD person is going to stand out, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean it's game over for you. So I would take the CSCS and I would intern. Networking is more powerful than any certifications. I'll give you an example. Like when I finished my graduate degree, I was like, I want to be the most like certified, the most certified strength coach out there. I literally did every certification I could find. I think I have like maybe 12 certifications, like corrective exercise, FMS, functional range conditioning, kettlebell certification, like anything I can think of, I went and got it because I'm like, if I know these things, they're going to see my resume and they're going to pick me thinking I'm the smartest guy. That didn't do much for me at all. I mean, what really got me jobs is referrals through my network. So reach out to coaches. Like, I don't know where you're based or who you know. You may just know one person, right? Try to learn from them, see what has made them successful. Right. In my case, I think there's a few things that made me successful. I think my like undeniable work ethic that really helped. My persistence. Like I tried to get an NBA job for I think 4 or 5 years before I finally got one. Like I got denied every single year. Anyways, I was reading a question. I got denied every single year, but I stayed persistent. They saw my name manually. I kept trying, right? And then during the time of getting denied, I improved, my value. I kept learning, kept trying to figure out what my deficits were. Why didn't I get the job? Oh, I didn't get the job because of this reason. What do I need to do to get my next job? And then just being genuine in my communication, continuing to network, like reaching out to more people, maintaining relationships, learning from each person I reached out to. How did you get to where you got to? Like what is really strong about you, or what value do you bring that I think I need to add, right? And then another thing I did, I just did whatever I could to get a job. Like I was living in my car. People started to find out about that. I had no money. I had negative money. I was making whatever sacrifice. I was undeniable. I was going to die before I failed at this, right? And if people see that, they'll respect it, right? Because at the end of the day, if someone respects you and they like you, they're probably going to, try to help you out, right? Especially if you're giving them your time. To be an intern is hard. Like, for all my interns, now that I'm a director who leads interns, the role has flipped, right? I used to be the person that wasn't interning, get unpaid and trying to get these positions. Now that I, get to determine who interns for me and how to help them reach these levels, I'm able to give them opportunities to show their value. I'm able to test them to see if they know what they're talking about. I'm able to challenge them. I'm able to give them chances to prove to me how committed they are, right? I can see who really wants and who doesn't, right? So find environments that'll really help you, honestly. Okay, I got a few questions that stacked up.
Card. He asked this question twice. You think you missed this question?
Let's see. Which one is it?
Here at COC, we are about to hit the midway.
I'll see what we're doing.
Oh, it's not popping up for you? That's weird. So he says, for some reason, it's not popping up for you, but he says, here at COC, we are about to hit the midpoint of our basketball season. Do you adjust or change your workouts to get ready to finish the season?
Okay, gotcha.
Second half of the season, sorry.
College of Kansas, I think is one of my friends. He asked,
we're about to hit the midpoint
of the basketball season.
Do you adjust?
Do you adjust or change your workouts to get ready to start finish the season, the next half of the season? Okay, so like I mentioned at the beginning of the call, or the live, someone asked me how to train in season for high school basketball athletes, right? So it's the same thing with high school basketball, college basketball, NBA, right? They all you all have to understand the periodization. You have to look at the schedule. So at COC, you guys probably have 35 games in the year, right? Probably similar to our schedule, right? And you're probably going into league now, right? Versus the last couple months probably been preseason training, so the schedule will be more consistent. You probably play like on a Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday, or Wednesday, Saturday, something like that. So you have time between the windows. So the periodization can actually be more consistent now than it was in the preseason. In the preseason, there's a lot of things that you can't expect, you can't anticipate, right? Because the games are happening so frequently, and they're not so linear as you like. In season play, it's going to be consistent Tuesday, Friday, or whatever. I should say that. Right now, you can know, okay, if the schedule is Tuesday, Friday, I know I can give these guys a hard exposure Wednesday and Saturday. I don't know how many times you see them a week. At a community college, it might be different, right? I don't know how many times you practice, but for us, not like we're in a league that has games every other day, so it doesn't really. I don't have that consistency, so I'm always adapting. But I would look at the days of games, and if it's consistent, I would periodize around that, right? So for me, like when I train our players and track our players, I go days out from game. For instance, if I'm using Catapult, which is a software people wear on their back to determine workload, right? It's a chip you put on your back. I'll say like, okay, if we're 3 days from a game, you can reach these high levels of thresholds. You can go really hard. 2 days out, we're dropping that down. One day out, it becomes really low. And then game day, you rise. So it's like a staircase descending down as you approach the game because you want to influence recovery. Then you rise to the top, right? So from a training perspective, when we're several days out, I push them. I'll do more strength based stuff, to provoke some soreness. Like if I have like 5 days out from the game, I'm trying to get them sore. I'm trying to train them really hard, right? Because I know they have an adaptation window. I can give them a really big stimulus, and I have time for them to recover and peak them, right? Usually 1 to 2 days out of games, we always get in the gym. We always do speed stuff, high change of direction, very explosive, high velocity things because I'm trying to stimulate their body. We also do tons of mobility 2 days out, 2 days and one day out, right? To prepare them because there's so much positional demands in sport and asymmetries compensations with college guys that you have to consider at all times. So I'm always looking at those things and working on that. But to answer your question, I would look at your game schedule and then determine how to make plan of action. But you should be able to periodize the best you periodize all year outside of summer because now you have consistency in games, probably twice a week, and the days are always the same. Okay, there are a few questions that popped up. So, um, true. Oh, true or false? Any male athlete in the world, 16 or older, at least 5'9", should be able to dunk on regulation hoop given the right training. Any athlete at 5'9", damn, that's a reach. I would say false, but it's close because there may be some genetic disadvantages that will never allow you to be that athletic. Um, 5'9" is crazy. If you gave me like 6 foot, I would say true, true. You can certainly dunk because 5'9", you gotta. It's not only height, but it's your reach is influenced by that too, right? So a 6'3" guy is probably gonna have at least a 6'3" wingspan, right? A 5'9" guy, a 5'9" wingspan. So 5'9" is 6 inches shorter than a 6'3" guy, which is also short on the wingspan as well, probably 6 inches shorter at least, right? So now you're missing 6 inches in height plus 3 inches in reach. So you're 9 inch difference from someone who's only 6 inches taller than you, right? So I would say it's false, but I'd say it's really close for a lot of people. I'd say a large percent of males should be able to dunk at 5'9", right? But you got to be disciplined, right? Because every inch shorter you are, the harder it becomes to dunk. So you have to like really focus on body composition. Like you got to be lean. You got to do a lot of fast, high velocity stuff. You got to be super strong relative to your body weight. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's just a really tough feat. I've seen a lot of people under 6 foot dunking. And we have a guy at 5'9" right now that has a 45-inch vertical on our team, and he can do whatever dunk he wants, right? But he's super fast, right? There's a lot of correlations between speed and jump height, right? He's one of the fastest people I've ever seen, and that's why he can dunk because he's able to transfer energy from horizontal to vertical. Okay, we have a few questions lined up, so I'm gonna start answering them. Okay, hey Dre, I'm a Marine officer who talked to you a little bit. Here's the question: Just started back working out on the vert a month ago. Started doing back squats, leg press, bleacher stadium jumps, box jumps, and calf raises. Body every day, and running schedule as it follows: Saturday, 7-mile recovery run; Sunday, 3-mile recovery run; Monday, rest; hard speed work, maximum effort nonstop, 4 to 5 run, 20, 30 minutes; Wednesday, 3-mile recovery; Thursday, interval run, hard speed work. With all that being said, how many vertical workouts can I do on top of this current running and lifting schedule while having proper recovery thing? Okay, so just looking at this broad program overview, I would say you're doing too much volume of cardio. Okay, so our muscles are categorized. If we just think from a muscle perspective, you have type 1 muscle fiber, you have type 2X and type 2B, right? Type 1 is slow twitch muscle fiber, right? It's designed to have more endurance qualities. It's not very powerful, very prone to endurance, like very available to wrong runners. Marathon runners are very type 1 driven. They can run for miles, not get tired, but it's a weaker muscle, right? Type 2X and type 2B, they're both fast twitch muscle fibers. One is moderate fast twitch, one is really fast twitch. The fastest of the fast twitch is going to exhaust quickly, but it's going to be very powerful, really strong contraction. Then there's an interchangeable one, right? That, depending on your training style, it can become more slow twitch or become more fast twitch, right? So if you're running 7 miles on a recovery day, 3 miles a day after, that's 10 miles in volume, right? It's a lot, right? Then you do 20, 30, 45 runs at 20, 30 minutes, on one of the days. Tempo run, which is changing velocities. Your type 2 changeable fibers are probably going to be more towards type 1 because you're getting so much running. Your body doesn't think it needs fast twitch because you're getting steps upon steps upon steps at a steady state pace. It's going to say, hey, I only jump a few times a week. I don't need to focus on that. I don't need to have that muscle fiber develop. I should be more slow twitch. So you're actually probably inhibiting your ability to become athletic. So if your goal is to improve your vertical, I would change your running volume. I would do, instead of 7-mile recovery, well, I think a recovery one would be good. I don't know about 7 miles though. I would do high velocity. Like I would do, if you're going to go on the track, if the track is your thing, I would do no more than 200s, maybe 400 at most, but I would do 200 repeats and I would do 100 repeats. Super high velocity, like max over 90 to 100%, do 100. Rest couple minutes, do 100. Rest couple minutes, do 100. Look at Usain Bolt's body type versus like someone who does marathon running. Usain Bolt, tons of muscle mass, very lean, right? Type 2 muscle athlete, very explosive. A marathon runner, very skinny, almost skinny fat, right? Because they need to have those type 1 qualities. So you got to think from a muscle perspective what you want to develop, right? So if you want to be more explosive, you should probably train your training to be more explosive, meaning short burst repeat, short burst repeat. And then for your lifting schedule, I think things like from a fundamental perspective, it looks good, right? You're hitting back squat, leg press. The exercise matters, but it's not substantial. Like as long as you're getting a really hard squat pattern off one legs and two legs, right? You're getting a really good hinge pattern off one legs and two legs, right? You're getting a frontal plane work, so like a defensive slide or like lateral squats, right? And you get a transverse exposure, something that twists, rotating, like rotational lunges or deceleration, cable turns and things like that. You can be creative with that, but you need to expose yourself to sagittal demands, frontal demands, and transverse demands. If you don't get those three things, you could create compensation. You could actually inhibit firing of muscle tissue. Another thing to consider, right, that people don't ever talk about, muscles work in opposition, right? So you have agonists and antagonists. So if I get my arm right here, if I squeeze my bicep, that's an agonist. This is a working muscle. In order for me to maximize the output here, my tricep is an antagonist, meaning it's resting. It has to rest completely. The more it can relax, the more this can fire. If my tricep is being squeezed and I'm trying to squeeze it simultaneously, that's called co-contraction. That actually limits how much they both fire, right? So if you're not training the body appropriately and understanding stretch reflex, right, and the fact that muscles take turns, you're going to have co-contraction, which is good at times, but for athleticism, you want to have the ability to turn on and off muscles immediately. Because say if I'm trying to squat, say I'm trying to jump to dunk, right? I have to understand that as I go down, I'm eccentrically loading my quads. As I take off, my posterior chain is probably a driving factor. During that process, muscles need to know when they're the main active tissue or the secondary tissue or inactive, right? So say if my glute creates the most dunking power, right? So if I'm a posterior driven mover and I jump super high, my glute gives me the power. Well, if your hips are tight, that means your hip flexor is not able to relax completely. It's staying locked. If it's staying locked, you don't get the activation from your glute, meaning you're not getting your true power output from your glute, which will then decrease your balance, right? Because you're not getting what you actually have. I had a guy with the Hornets that I increased 4 inches of vertical in 6 weeks, and he had no balance, and he got balance that fast, literally from doing mobility every day. I released compensatory patterns. I broke up fascial tissue. I realigned his body. Then he was able to express the power he already had. Some of you guys that think you're not athletic or think you don't have balance, you guys probably do. Your body's just not using it because you're either using the wrong movement strategy. You have compensatory patterns. You're loading and unloading tissue. You don't work at high speeds. There's a lot of variables to consider. So it's very important to understand those things. But those are some suggestions I make from like a very broad understanding of what you've been doing. Do more high velocity stuff, more short bursts, super high output, then your type 2 muscle fibers will, or type 2X will start to transition and become more fast twitch rather than slow twitch. Any questions you have on that, feel free to ask. But that's a quick explanation. Okay. Another question I have. Any books you recommend? Oh, any books you recommend for aspiring strength conditioning coaches looking to get into basketball? There's a bunch of books. The best book I ever read, and there's so many. Anything Verkhoshansky is like phenomenal. Let me still try to remember the name right now. Let's see. Super Training. That's the name of the book. Super Training is phenomenal. It's super dense. Teach you a lot of fundamental stuff about weight training and how to structure. Also, Jordan Strength is a really good course. Teaches you about how to use force plates. It's real high tech. I don't know if you necessarily need that unless you're trying to be a coach at this level that I am. Even Jump Attack. Jump Attack is the first book I ever read by Tim Grover, Michael Jordan's trainer. And it teaches you a lot about just like, just appropriate stuff to improve athleticism. I'm also releasing these different PDFs. Like I'll send a PDF following this Zoom meeting about like how to understand your profile. Are you elastic driven? Are you muscular driven? And then once you understand that, then you can determine training programs, right? Because everyone expresses force in two ways, through your muscles or through your tendons. And you need to understand where you rely on, right? John Morant, tendon driven athlete. Zion Williamson, muscle driven athlete. If you're a muscle driven athlete and you're doing tendon driven programs, you're not going to optimize your performance. If you're more John Morant and you're doing Zion's program, that doesn't help you. You need to be more like John Morant, right? So once you understand your profile based on common movement traits, then you can understand how to create a training program. Don't buy any PDF. Like this is why I'm doing this stuff, because when I was young, I would go on Google or whatever. The resources were limited back then, but I would go on Google. I want to jump higher, and I read this. Do squat jumps. Do this. Like very common by the book routine. Who's to say that helped me? They don't know if my deficit was strength. They don't know if my elasticity was good or not. It's a general cookie cutter type thing, and that was a problem, right? Like, yeah, I got athletic, and my athleticism is primarily looking, now that I know the body. My athleticism comes from my muscular output. I take a long time to jump. I'm a 2-foot jumper, right? So I'm over here doing all these plyometrics and not focusing on relative strength. That actually slowed me down. I didn't get athletic. I got really athletic after playing basketball once I understood the body. Like my highest vertical in college was 37. I got a 42 at 30 years old, right? There's a reason for that. I started to understand how I needed to train my athletic profile. Right? I'm a muscular-driven athlete. If I increase muscular strength, my relative strength increases. My relative strength increases. My power output increases. The ability to express power and fly is easier because I'm stronger relative to my body, right? So I don't need as much plyometrics as I thought I did. And you guys got to all ask yourself the same question, or else you're going to be wasting your time, or at least slowing down your process. Okay. Do you know if one on the skill side, if USC has me incorporating using the CLA more as it's slowly becoming more mainstream? CLA. If USC has me incorporating using the CLA more as it's slowly becoming mainstream. Not sure what that acronym CLA means or is representing. If you can explain that, I'm happy to answer the question. Okay. While we wait, CLA is constraints-led approach. Okay, perfect. Do you know if on the skill side, if USC has me incorporating using the constraints-led approach? more slowly becoming mainstream. Are you talking from a skills perspective? Like,
Yeah.
you're not doing that well because your change direction speed is not that well. That's a constraint, right? So now you're trying to evolve your game to optimize your athletic potential, right? So like Luca would not be his constraints would be his change of direction speed, right? Or his speed agility quickness, right? So he may start to move his body mass. He start to use his body mass to throw the defender center mass off, so then he has control. Is that kind of what you're referring to? Huh. All right, I'll wait till they send a follow up. Okay, is there any? Do you happen to know if they use it in skill acquisition during basketball training? If what I'm talking about is exactly what you're referring to, we do think of positional advantage. We do think of skill sets, even with recruiting. Like we won't recruit people that don't fit our system because they say if they don't have the physical ability, that'd be a constraint, right? So we don't want them on our team. So I don't know what your deficits are, but you Popeyes by Alex Sarma, Kenny Atkinson on the Cavs. Yeah, I'm not sure. I have to look into that from a skills perspective. What the details of what their constraints that approach is. That's pretty fascinating. Once I understand it, then I can give you a better answer. If not, I may be leading you the wrong direction. So I'll look up. I can follow up with you on that one. Is there any jumping plow? You got it. Is there any jumping plow program I should follow to supplement the change in running? Then trying to maximize cardio time and get the vert. Okay, if you're muscular driven. So if you're muscular driven, um, it depends what resources you have. First thing I would think of is trying to find a way to understand your relative strength, right? And there's ways to, if you have force plates, easiest way to do it. If you have even a trap bar, right? You can look at how much your body weight is. You can look at how much weight you can do under a certain amount of reps, or even do something called time set drop offs, where you do the reps and you look at how long it takes you to complete the reps. And that kind of tells you how strong you are relative to your body, right? You can divide it by your mass and figure that out. Trying to maximize cardio time. You may not need a ton of plyometrics. That's why I'm saying that. Or maybe you do. But I think the first thing you want to do is understand your relative strength. If you know you have a decent amount of relative strength or if it needs improvement, then you would address that, right? And then also consider what's your mobility like? Are you hinging? Are you a squat driven athlete? Do you have a lateral displacement, right? Are you loading or unloading one leg? Maybe it's a mobility thing. I don't know. Maybe you just need mobility. That maybe you're already strong. I don't know your athletic profile, but those are things to consider. Um, but yeah, if you're a muscular driven athlete, typically you don't need too much plyometrics, right? Unless you have like a reactive, or your RSI mod, which is something I use in force plates. So ultimately, what it tells you is, say you do a jump, right, and your jump is taking too long, and you're not able to create the propulsive effort to take off. Because ultimately, to jump high, you're battling time, right? So if you don't get much power in that time that takes you to jump, you have a deficit relative strength in your relative strength index. So if you can, during the time if you can jump, if you can go down quick and explode and continue to accelerate as you take off, your peak power will probably increase, which means your relative strength is pretty good, which means you jump pretty high, right? If your RSI mod is slow, like it takes you too long to do the jump and your jump height is not that high, you probably got to improve your elastic qualities, right? So if you don't have those resources, play D1 soccer, call it D1 college soccer, could grab rim at 5'9" off 2 feet easily, fast laterally, quick 40-yard dash. Okay, so considering you played soccer, you probably have good speed quickness traits, right? Like I mentioned earlier, how I would train my kids. Grab rim off 2. It'd be fascinating to see what your metrics are at this day, to see where you address for training, because it sounds like you've had good exposures. And that's why you have a good cardiorespiratory capacity, right? You talk about running all these miles. It's probably not hard for you. It's probably familiar, right? So your deficit may just be speed strength because you haven't worked on it, because you've ran at steady states for a long time. Like you get these small bursts of high speed and then you run for periods where it's not very hard. Like sounds like soccer. High speed burst, usually chill, chill. High speed burst, usually chill, chill. If you're focused on just jumping high, I'll probably move some of those slow, steady state intensity stuff over to just high speed. Okay, I'm coaching a fifth, sixth grade rec team this year. Do you have any recommendation for fun warm ups to sneak in athletic qualities during practice for them? Okay. Yeah, there's some really fun games. One game I like to do is a mirror drill. It's very demanding, but it gives you really hard exposures to change direction, and it's competitive. So there's different progressions you can do to it, right? The first one, right? You can just go lateral, right? So there'll be one person facing a defender, right, or your partner, right, and you stand within the key area, or you can expand the distance. It just makes it harder, right, and more risk of injury because there's higher forces, quicker, more velocity determined. So what I would say is you get them standing inside the free throw line. They face each other. One person is the cat, one person's the mouse, right? So one person's leading the drill, one person's trying to mirror them. So you blow a whistle, probably 20 seconds, which I usually do, and one person is trying to slide side to side, go inside, change direction whenever they want, right? The other person needs to try to mirror them exactly, like they're stuck like glue. They don't want to ever lose them. So one person's trying to get away while one person stays. You do that side to side, only lateral sliding for like 20 seconds, rest, switch partners, and do it as many times as you want, right? Then from there you can progress it. You can do sprint forward, back pedal, right? Same sequence. They're next to each other. They run, decel, back pedal, run, decel, back pedal. Then you could do change of direction like a crossover step, crossover step, crossover step. Then you can put them all together: lateral slide, sprint forward, back pedal, crossover step, and it's like super demanding. It's such a huge stimulus, right? That's a really good warm up drill and very demanding for the nervous system. Like doing that frequently, and something simple that I do with our guys every single day when we finish warm up, I have them do forward and backward hops at their highest speed possible, 8 seconds, 8 to 10 seconds. I have them do lateral hops fast as you can, rotational hops fast as you can. I've even made squares of just tape, and I have them do like square drills. I'll say sideways, X drill, clockwise, counterclockwise, and they're just reacting, trying to just make short ground contact times and cover them as you can. I'll say 10 circular, 10 clockwise, 10 counterclockwise, X drill, forward, backwards, side to side, and just keep yelling at different cues. And they're like, trying to go fast again. One leg, two leg, right? You can always try to throw them off, and they're trying to adapt. Those are pretty good. I'll stay on for the next couple minutes, and I'm gonna end this live, and I'll follow up with you guys through email. And I have a free ebook that I want to send to you as well that refers to muscular versus elastic athletes to give you some leads on how to help your training program and just understand how these produce power. Okay. Scott Cochran from the New Orleans Hornets was my trainer in college, and his workout program was got me grab the rim. I never pushed it to dunking. Just trying to figure out workouts in particular, like leg strength or plow, mixture of it all, based on what you know about athletic profile now. I want to dunk show the Marines. I would also say this because I haven't said this yet. I would practice dunking. Dunking is a skill, and there's a massive neurological demand. Like if you're bench pressing, barbell bench press, you practice barbell bench press, you get better at it, right? Say if I was practicing barbell bench press all the time, and then I went and did dumbbell bench, right? My numbers will be substantially lower. Vice versa, right? From practicing a certain pattern, it's going to help me. So if you practice consistently your one leg left leg, one leg dunk, and you do it over and over again, you develop the neuromuscular branching, and you develop the familiarity, and you develop the skill to dunk, right? You have the coordination for it, right? So figure out what kind of dunk you are, whether one leg or two leg, whether you're left right approach, and then take action based off that. So I'd say add that as well. Go to some gyms have adjustable hoops. Go dunk as much as you can. Do dunking sessions a couple times a week, right? But monitor your volume, right? Don't go and do 100 dunks one day out of nowhere because you might get a lot of inflammation and like extreme delayed onset muscle soreness. So consider that. So try to ramp it up just like you structure any training program. Okay, B Will, what's up, man? Can we speak about the baseline testing for an athlete? Why assessing athletes is important to create a constructive program? Okay, so to do an evaluation protocol is one of the most important things you can do when onboarding an athlete. I mean, for anybody, you need to know what they're good at and what they're not good at, right? And that's why I talk about categorizing into elastic and muscular, right? I need to know, like, any guy on my team is going to do a baseline evaluation. They're going to do a basic, functional movement screen, which is my own, not necessarily from the functional movement screen test, but I'll have them do bilateral overhead squat position, have them do single leg tests, have them do lateral tests, see what their, joint passive and active ranges of motions are. Then I'll have them do reactive tests, two leg, one leg, change of direction to see if there's compensations. Because some people might squat well in a calm environment, but when they go to jump, their strategy is completely different. That's a problem, right? You don't want a big discrepancy in movement strategy. Okay. So once you understand that and what they do and what they don't do, like, it depends on your resources too. Like we have tons of technology at USC, so I'm able to really dive in. Right. So say if I see on your overhead squat, it looks like there's a shift to the right. Then I'll get them on one leg and I'll test their right and left leg. Is the discrepancy larger? Am I really starting to see problems? Or was it just maybe something I saw bilaterally? Right. Because when you have two legs down, it's closed chain. You're kind of stuck. Right. If you have one leg, you have degrees of freedom to rotate and create ranges, through tissue because you have more degrees of freedom. Right. So things to consider. But yeah, it's very important to understand what an athlete has. So you want to create a consistent protocol for every single person you onboard to determine what they do and don't do well and what their shortcomings are. Right. I'm not looking at the things they do great. Yes, I'm aware of it, but I'm looking at the things they don't do well because those are things that can usually lead to bigger problems. All right. If you have any other questions based on that, just let me know. All right. This is gonna be the last question. What do you think is the best way to get the most out of interning with my university sports performance staff? Okay. I would just definitely be intentional. Show them that you value their time, right? And I think they'll respect that and give you their time back. I would take initiative. That's something I did as an intern. Like I feel like when I was an intern, I wasn't, necessarily enabled. I felt like I just had to stand there, not even coach. Like they were almost scared to give me the freedom to run the floor. Like I wanted the responsibility. I wanted to prove myself. But if you don't give me the reins, I can't show you who I am. So a lot of times I felt like, I didn't get to really show what I can do. I was standing there just helping rack weights, clean the weight room, like very redundant stuff, like almost a rite of passage stuff, not necessarily make me better, but to put my time in. And I didn't like that. So I try not to let any of my interns or anybody I help feel the same way. I want to empower them. I want them to show me like who are you going to be, like give you opportunity and show me like how good of a strength coach you want to become, And then other things like what's your commitment like, like when I was trying to come up, like that's all that mattered. Like I wouldn't go out. I was in my mid-20s staying at home. Like all my friends would go out at night. I live with hella roommates in a big house. We're all splitting rent. They go out on the weekends and I stayed home and studied or I do an internship. Like I was willing to make the sacrifices and people started to recognize that. So my friends that see me succeed now, they're like, you put the time in, like you deserve this. Like you made all these sacrifices as a young kid with, or a young man, like with a dream. Like when my interns show me that, I'm like, I'm going above and beyond to help them. Right. Like, and it's also really hard. So you want to be ready for the interviews because once you try to get your first job out of an internship, you're going against so many people. You haven't created separation yet. They look at you guys as all interns. They don't know what intern is the best one or what internship is the best, like most reputable one. They're going to ask you hard questions in your first interview. Do you know these things? Do you know this technology? So whoever you intern under, I would say to reach out to them and just be very clear with them. This is my dream. What are my shortcomings? Ask for transparency. What do you think I need to get better at? Like, can we do practice things? Can you give me assignments? Can you give me practice interview questions? Like, what do you think will help me the most in my career? Like, I respect people who sacrifice their time, right? So I feel like it's my responsibility to try to help them get a job. But if I put you in a position to try to get a job and you don't capitalize on it because you didn't know something, I'm like, damn, it's either on me that I didn't teach you it or that you didn't go seek it. So definitely like take initiative, create projects, like try to find ways to learn and then ask, the person you're interning under, like, what do I need to do? Or what do you think will stop me from getting a job? What are my shortcomings? How's the field innovating? Like what's changing about it? All right.
I have one more right question and we can be done.
Okay, let's see.
Because this one's a good one. So this is having worked with college and NBA, college players and NBA champions. What would you say is the biggest difference that separate the college players from becoming those highly successful NBA players, aside from luck or opportunity?
Okay, so the question is, having had the experience to work with NBA players and college players, what things do I see college athletes do that create separation that really like show like this guy should be an NBA player? He's a pro. He does everything it takes to get to the next level. And what things don't they do? It's very clear. I mean, even in the NBA, I could tell you who's gonna, I've seen first rounders that I'm like, they're not gonna last in the league. And they don't because there's fundamental traits that some athletes have that make them successful. So in the college setting, I can already tell you, if you show me the top 100 high school kids and I got to hang out with them, I could tell you which ones are going to the NBA and which ones aren't probably within a week of working with them. Right. So things that make you successful. Right. I would say your work ethic. how much effort you put into the things you're doing, whether it be skill development, whether it be weight training, performance, nutrition, recovery. How serious do you take it, right? Because your effort will dictate your return on investment. If you're not willing to bust your ass and compete against everybody in the world who has the same goal, you're probably not gonna create separation, right? So the guys that are the hungriest, like Steph to this day is so hungry. Like he has no reason to, but he's intrinsically motivated. He wants to leave a legacy, right? He still works up. Like if we're not around, he's working out by himself as hard as he can every single day, just proving to himself that he could do it, right? So I got guys that will come on visits or whatever, and they act entitled. They were like like this is supposed to happen. Like I'm gonna be in the NBA no matter what. It's not that easy. And if you make it to the NBA with this attitude, you're not gonna last very long. I don't care if you're the first overall, prospect or highest rated recruit. It doesn't matter. Like the fundamental traits create separation. So that's one thing that I know, like, that I've seen from experience is like you got to put the effort in. You got to try hard as you can at all times and try to maximize every opportunity. Trying to just be a good person too. You need to respect people. You need to respect people's time. You need to be respectful of the things they're trying to teach you. Right. The people that are in this field, they genuinely want to help you. This is a career that, from my position or a skills position, player development, whatever, that we find it very rewarding to help others, right? That's like what drives us in this job. This is a profession about like feeling like you have a purpose. My purpose is to help people stay healthy, to make them as athletic as they possibly be. I get excited when I'm working on return to play and someone gets on the court finally after all the months of them working hard together. Like that is like the best feeling. I'm probably, right now we got people that are rehabbing. I can't mention people's names today, but I'm working with people on a like consistently every day and night. I'm communicating all the time. I literally can't sleep some nights because I'm thinking about like, oh, like I'll get interrupted in my sleep. Man, I should do this with him tomorrow. I should do this. Oh, I wonder how he's feeling. Like I'm putting my heart into this. So like, if you don't respect the people you're working with and you don't put your heart on the line at the same degree, you're not respected by them, right? And these NBA scouts will call me. What's this guy like? What's his character like? How's he treat other people? If I can't speak highly on who you are as a person, it's hard for me to give you a good, recommendations to an NBA team. So some things that really help is like just be a great person, and whatever you can control it. Like do as hard as you can, go as hard as you can on those things. I think there's a lot of upside just by following that alone. All right, I think that's it. Any other questions before I jump off? Anything to say? It's been an hour. Cool. All right. I appreciate you guys' time. Hopefully, it was pretty insightful. Happy to answer any questions anytime. Like I said, this was something I didn't have when I was growing up, and I kind of want to create a um, structured feedback that gives you guys, direction on how things should be done. Not no bull crap, you know, programs that people just put online, or I want to be something that provides value. This is a side thing at the end of the day. Like, so I want to make people feel like they have a chance, right? Like the things I didn't have when I was young. So, um, yeah, just follow up with me about the training programs. You can send me things you've been doing. I'll tell you what the shortcomings are about dunking. That's a cool goal. I hope you get that. Anyways, I appreciate your time, and we'll do something again in the future. But I'll follow up with you guys with an email. If you haven't subscribed, we send you a free ebook. So let me attach this our website. Shit.
It's there, and they just have to go to the description.
Okay, go to the description. I guess it's in there. Here, I'll put it in the chat right now. So if you subscribe, there's going to be an ebook that myself and my business partner wrote together about how to be our perspective on how to become great from the things we've seen. So I talk about experiences with different teams I've worked with. And then from that, if you're subscribed, you'll get our free ebook after this one, which is about tendon and muscular dominance. And then I'll just keep putting other stuff. Like I was trying to present some stuff, but it's not letting me screen share. So I'll send those in PDFs as well in the future. But yeah, feel free to reach out anytime. Appreciate y'all.